Welcome to Mini Mastery. In this series, we're painting an adventuring party of player characters miniatures ready for tabletop gaming. From start to finish, we'll paint the entire party. We'll talk about tips, techniques, colors, and the characters so you can learn more about each of the characters in this campaign. Let's wet the brushes and jump right in. So we're going to be working on Dave, the Dwarven Fighter. We just finished Jaw. We're just going to do some basing on him. But Jaw, the Paladin, is done. Now we're going to focus on Dave, the Fighter. So as we get ready for completing Jaw, as I'm looking at colors, I'm just going to work a little bit on the basing. So you can see I've already put ground terrain on and painted it brown. Now I'm just doing a black wash. That'll give some shadow and depth to it. I don't know how much of the basing of Jaw we're going to see on video, just because I'm an opportunistic painter, and as I get time I'm going to be doing more of the ground effects even when I'm not working on Dave. But just applying a thin wash. This is just a black wash over the brown ground elements. But let's start talking about Dave. So the character of Dave is a Dwarven Fighter who was a soldier prior to deciding to go into the adventuring life. A dwarf of few words. He's not looking to be the team leader, just the team muscle. So he is very capable in combat, but pretty kept to himself. We're going to speed it up here so we can do it. You see I'm using my sable hair brush. That's a size 1. And dwarves are known to have a darker skin tone, which is kind of funky because they're underground creatures. You would think they're white. However, because they're hardier, their skin tones are, in fantasy anyhow, darker than human skin tones. So I'm going with a darker shade. This is called Warrior Flesh and has some brown tone to it. I apologize, the camera in and out of focus because of my hand, but just putting down a heavy base coat, not a heavy base coat, thin paint, but over painting the actual flesh areas, which on this dwarf and many of the dwarves, gnomes, halflings, small creatures, you can see there is not a lot of skin to paint. In comparison to everything else, very little skin is showing. So it's really just a little bit above the eyes, the nose, the cheekbones, and the lower lip. But lots of armor, and a few doodads here and there, and of course a big bushy beard that will probably be one of the last things that we paint. Now, as I'm looking at it, I'm noting some details. So the player is actually a photographer, and the sculpt, has some round designs in the shield as well as the armor. I'm going to use those later on. Here I'm doing a darker flesh wash that'll push in shadows for the recessed areas. We had to skip just because you want to let that dry thoroughly, and I didn't want to leave you here watching paint dry. So now we're going back to our regular skin tone, and we're just going to retouch up to bring areas back up out of the shadows that we laid in, and again sped up so that you can see progress move a little faster. But hitting the nose, the cheekbones, the lips, and then I'm actually doing a little bit above the eyes there, because if the player wants to pick it up and look at it, I want it to be able to, I don't want below that helmet just to be all shaded colors. So the next lighter tone, this is that same base coat, but starting to mix with a little just regular flesh tone. and covering about 1/2 to 3/4 from the previous color. Just simple progression. That way we have smooth transitions and it blends easier on this small space. And then an even lighter coat, being very careful to just cover again about 1/2 to 3/4 of what I've previously painted. And that shield actually makes the figure's left side hard to paint on the face. You can see the details a little bit there. It looks funky because he doesn't have eyes. It's hard to kind of envision everything. So final highlights here. This is the lighter flesh tone with just a touch of white. Now generally on figures you want to go up to a complete white just to really pop the highlights. And I'm going to skip it on this one because it's a dwarf and it's supposed to be a darker shade of flesh. So now it's time to work on the eyes. So Dave, in the adventure campaign, whenever he's getting ready to fight or confront anybody, he yells out, "Wolverines." So the party is starting to get known as the Wolverines. Not overly much, just because generally there aren't a whole lot of people to see or hear that battle cry prior to engaging. And this I had to use, of course, an even smaller brush to start laying in the black. So when I paint eyes, after the flesh tone, I just go in and paint the entire eye area black. And I overpaint the eye just a little bit. If you were to look at it very close, it would look like mascara once it's done, but just the eye socket, the eyeball area. And then we'll put in some white, give that a moment to dry. This actually isn't white, it's an ivory color. So we'll put that right on top of the black, leaving just an outline of the black visible. And I apologize it's out of focus, but so hard to do on that left side, especially because of the shield. So Dave is currently looking for stronger weapons and armor. He just in the campaign switched out his longsword for a great axe and just had it lightly enchanted. So he has just gotten a magic weapon and is on the hunt for some magic armor. In the story, they've gotten a couple of leads on where to find some. So there's the eyes. A little bit challenging to see in the camera, but believe me, they are there. The eyes are painted with pupils and balanced pretty even, so when you're looking at it, the miniature is looking in one direction and does not have a lazy eye. And because the characters or the player's favorite color is orange, of course the base is painted in orange so it shows up on the map nice and easy. I'm doing just an additional coat. These are a little bit thinner paints and I'm thinning them out on my wet palette, so it'll take a couple of coats for that. But because that's the color on the base, I'm actually going to bring that into the mini a little bit. And because the figure is wearing heavy armor, I decided I would use that color in some of the fabric. And I want a contrasting color to that. So for the pants, we'll do in blues. So orange will, of course, shade to red. I'll lay that in first, just a pretty deep red, and then we'll highlight it up into orange. That way it isn't too dominant. It won't look like hunter orange, like he's wearing a blaze vest or a blaze shirt. We want it to be tonal. And again, he doesn't have a whole lot of fabrics or cloth showing, so these are just going to be small pops of color from the armor. but it'll really bring in some additional pop to that miniature. It'll have those bursts of color among the arms and armor that'll really stand out and tie into the base and contrast with each other. So there's the red. You can see just barely visible sleeves on there in between the gloves and the chainmail armor. Now we'll do a deep blue. This will contrast with the orange really well. And it'll look pretty much like he's wearing jeans, but that's okay, because we're just looking for color vibration or color to stand out from the armor. Very deep blues here. And then we'll highlight those up. Still in blue, so it contrasts with the orange highlights as well as the orange base. And the pants are kind of nice on that right leg. There's a little bit of like folds and everything in there, as well as a little bit on the left leg near the knee, kind of to the inside of the knee. So it'll have some good character to highlight up to following folds of cloth, which is always nice with more dynamic posed figures. It really drives more dynamic action into it. So here we're highlighting the tunic. So this is using the base red, blending it in with some orange so that it transitions up into almost the same orange as the base. It won't quite be as bright, but it'll be similar. And then just laying in the first highlights here. And this is using a triad of color on these fabric parts because they're so small. So Dave the Fighter, he's just hit level 4 and is definitely looking forward to continuing his development. He just completed a bar brawl and looking to, of course, earn a little bit more clout and test his skills, and did really well. His feats were used really smart, and ended up utilizing the character abilities really well, the players, or the character's abilities really well. It came down to a slugfest. It could have been anybody's game based on the dice rolls. One of his adventuring partners jumped in and was able to distract and kind of call a halt to the brawl and throw his opponent off guard a little bit. But the opponent was kind of in the same boat. So, and there we've got highlights all working. Again, just continuing from the darkest shade up towards the lightest for hero characters. I always envisioned the light source being directly above them, like a shining beacon from heaven. And just continuing highlights. Now that you're seeing those highlights, you're starting to see some of the fabric sculpts on the pants. So the details really bring out, even on the camera, the flow of the fabric. And yeah, it kind of looks like he's wearing jeans and a red and orange shirt. Thought about doing it plaid, but figured nope, it's so small of an area. Hope you enjoyed. We'll jump into it next time too. Thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed. Here's an additional video that we feel you may like. And be sure to hit the subscribe button as we continue to grow and develop. Our first milestone of 25 subscribers is going to lead to 5 of those subscribers drawn at random to receive a free t-shirt. Make sure to share and help us grow. Thank you, and be sure to comment below. Where will your adventures take you?